It's finally here, election year, the year we've all been waiting for. It's our opportunity to make change, to get the kind of city that we want, to get the kind of mayor that we need. When I heard that former Mayor Bertina is considering running against three-time Mayor Fred, I thought to myself, why do we keep recycling our mayors? Why can't we have somebody who can lead our city who is not tethered to the toxicity of City Hall culture or beholden to the power brokers of the past? We have an opportunity to have new leadership in the mayor's chair, around the council table. This is our chance. And so I'm so excited to ask three Hamiltonians who have a lot of vision and passion for our city, Kojo Damptey, Kristen Archer, and Chris Earle, what they think we need in a mayor and what they want in a city. Let's get started. Welcome back to the OShow. I'm Laura Babcock, and we have such a great group that is going to be joining us in a minute to answer those big questions. But let me just remind you, if you like the show, Hamilton's Current Affairs show, subscribe on YouTube. Make it easier for all of us to get the great content to you. Okay, I can't wait to find out what our guests have to say. I want to invite a returning champion to the OShow, Kojo Damptey from Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion. Kojo, how you doing?
Good. Thank you.
You wrote an op-ed in the paper that I want to get to in just a minute about how the mayor has let down racialized people in Hamilton, in your view. Lots to dig into there as we talk about the mayor's job, but great to have you back on the program. Also joining us for the first time is Kristen Archer. You know Kristen, of course, from the I Heart Hamilton blog, as well as from her show on CFMU. Kristen, it's so great to have you on the show, Kristen.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, long time listener, first time caller here.
Well, I love that you're always watching and promoting the O Show, and I love to see how you promote the city. I mean, you say be a tourist in your own town, and I think that's a great way of looking at Hamilton. I also want to invite another first timer to the O Show, Chris Earle. Chris, I know you from Twitter, and you posed some extraordinarily good questions when we saw that once again, former Mayor Bob Bertina is floating out that he might run, and lots of people apparently are asking him to. You said, but why? What would be his purpose? I'm paraphrasing, but I thought your questions were great. And of course, you teach a class at Master in Urban Politics, so it's so wonderful to have you on Hamilton's Current Affairs show. It's a perfect match. So welcome to the program, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, this is going to be fun because it's the start of a new year, and it's not just any new year, and it's not just a difficult pandemic year. It is an election year. And in most election years, it's kind of like, okay, who's going to run? What's going to happen? I kind of feel, and I'm going to go around the horn and see what you guys think about this, but I kind of feel like this election year has been the most anticipated that I can ever remember in my 25 years in Hamilton.
I was born and raised in Hamilton. I've seen a lot of elections. I remember as an elementary school kid at Westwood asking a lot of questions about, what are these signs? Who are these people? Who's this Bob I keep hearing about? And at the time it was Bob Morrow. But I think that, this is a really hotly anticipated mayoral election, in large part because so many Hamiltonians are so aware of what's been going on. We really got engaged in 2018 around the real, two-person fight between Mayor Fred and Vito Scro over really important issues, an infrastructure issue that has the potential to change the city. People got engaged, and a lot of people sided with Mayor Fred and said, yes, we want this investment in LRT. And so people got really engaged about that. And then from the get-go, from the immediate first council meetings, we were hearing about these strange things that were going on, the cover-up with Coots Paradise, the issues with decorum and all the problems when it came to how council was working collaboratively. This is a problem that we had seen with Mayor Fred's previous time in the mayor's chair. And so folks started asking really critical questions. And I think now, especially because of the pandemic, especially because of the fact that folks are really aware of the climate crisis, the fact that folks know that housing is becoming increasingly unaffordable, that we have serious issues that need to be addressed. Hamiltonians are sitting up and taking notice, and they are ready engage with this election. I think that's why this is such a hotly contested and hotly anticipated mayoral contest this time.
I agree with your assessment. You know, Sewergate got us all really paying attention because it affected our lives directly. And for me, it felt like for all the mistakes council's made over the years, this one, they knowingly kept this information from us and our families. And I think that was a betrayal. But also, to your point, we started to get engaged in watching council because of the pandemic. And I want to ask you this, Kristen. You do your show online now at CFMU. So many of us do our stuff online at home, you know, and we're watching our computers even more than we used to. Do you think that that's raised people's level of awareness of who the councillors are, what they're talking about, what's on the council agenda? Do you think that that has helped with the level of engagement in this year's election?
Yeah, I think definitely that really accelerated and really brought to light so many things. If you weren't aware of it before, it was hard to escape all of the things that were going on. And I think back to credit to Ryan Moran for starting the council fail list. You know, it was just unavoidable. It seemed like, I know for me, after attending Pride in 2019 and witnessing that violence firsthand, and subsequently every single day, it seemed like something was happening to make it worse, whether it was the mayor's comments or the police chief's comments. Just by the day, literally, it just kept going. So for Ryan to make that list, which I elected, it's on their website. I encourage people to check that out because these aren't small things. These are monumental things, from Coots Paradise to the Red Hill Valley Expressway cover up to, you know, equity in the city. It's so many things that we can't ignore. So I think everyone, or most, I would hope that people are paying attention, and because it is that election year, so now more than ever, it's important that people are aware.
You know, I love that you brought up the violent attack at Pride, because that's what it was. And the response from the mayor was not only wanting in terms of the response time, because he can quickly respond to an op-ed I write that he doesn't like, or respond to something else that he cares about, but he wouldn't respond to that for days. And then when he did finally respond to that, or when he did finally respond to Sewergate, it lacked the understanding of the betrayal of what people needed from the mayor. And as Cameron Kretsch, who has been on the OShow many times, announced his candidacy for his ward race yesterday, his video, he talked about the fact that, you know, Hamiltons deserve leaders with transparency and compassion. And I just think of all the things you listed there, Kristen, and thinking there was no sense of it felt tone deaf to me, or lacked compassion. And that, to me, I think is something that really sticks with people when they look back over the last term of this mayor, is where was the empathy, the compassion, even down to the Summer of Hate when we were out front of City Hall and he wasn't there until he was forced into a photo op, right? So Kojo, let me go to you, because your op-ed this week, you talked about how the mayor has failed racialized Hamiltonians in particular. Can you just sort of pull out the notes of that op-ed for us? And do you think that this year is more anticipated than past elections?
Yeah, I think the purpose of the op-ed was to also show the historical respect for Black communities and other racialized communities and even other marginalized communities. And that's why I started with the 2018 mayoral debate that happened at Accra, where he said, again, we need to change the hiring screening process for police officers. So if he was able to say that at a Black community event, I mean, consciously or unconsciously, you are saying there's a problem with policing as it relates to hate crimes. So then once you win the election, what are you going to do about it? And he hasn't done anything about it. And then when we raise the issues, he then says it's outrageous to think that there could be racist police officers. Well, then why did you tell us in 2018 that you were going to change the hiring process for police officers? And I think that's the discredit that he does to our communities. And this is not to say that he doesn't have friends that are Black, because I'm sure that will come up. But again, collectively, you are promising something to us in a community meeting where there's only 4 walls and no one else can hear you. And thank goodness for Samantha Craigs from the CBC Hamilton that mentioned that, so that now we have that evidence to show you stated it, but in the last 4 years, you haven't even done anything about it.
And I would add to that. I mean, you mentioned that the mayor has Black friends. One of his friends came on the OShow, Dr. Gary Warner, a few weeks ago, and he said, the mayor is my friend. I've talked to him about this. And then he went on to talk about how leaders with authority, the mayor, councillors, and the police chief, need to actually listen, need to hear from people's firsthand experiences, need to show empathy, need to demonstrate that they're hearing in order for there to be any kind of trust and collaboration. And Kojo, beyond all of those comments and the great work that CBC and some other journalists have been doing in town recently on these issues, when the knee was put on Roa's neck by the police, that image that went around the world, that disgraceful, terrible evidence of police brutality, when there was finally a buildup of such a cacophony that the mayor had to address it at council, he applauded the work of police. It didn't seem to me that there was an acknowledgement of we need to investigate what happened, or we need to be concerned, or this is not how we're supposed to be treating our racialized community. I mean, what did you think about the response to what happened with the police that day at Beamer?
Yeah, I've said it and I'll say it again. He even went on to give the definition of systemic racism, which was utterly wrong, by the way. And so this is the kind of leadership that people are saying, is this what we really want? And I would like to just go back to 2018. I know that in 2018, it was LRT. Are you for or are you against? And we have to we have to learn from that. When we are talking about elections, when we're talking about choosing political leaders, we need to not get into this dichotomy of one issue. There are lots of issues that are going on in our city, and we have to understand how they all intersect and interlock and affect different communities. And that's what we want to hear. We don't want to hear binary decisions of for or against. We want to understand the nuance of how particular decisions impact other issues. How does Sewergate impact our climate? How does it impact recreational activities for people to stay healthy, enjoy the great city that we have? So these are some of the things too that we have to learn from 2018, not just the issues per se, but how do people understand the issues and what solutions are they bringing forward to ensure that we have a city that is acceptable and great for us to cheer on and to celebrate.
Kristen, we've been talking about some of our concerns with the leadership from this mayor, from Mayor Fred. What do you think Hamilton needs in a mayor? Because as Kojo said, there's a lot of issues, as you identified, Kristen, there's a lot of issues. What do you think we need in a mayor going forward? Because it really is up to us. We don't have to keep, choosing between things we don't want. There might be other people who decide to run after watching this show. I mean, what do you think we need?
Yeah, I think going back to being silent on an issue or an inadequate response on an issue, I think we need a mayor who continually shows up and, shows us that they're working towards all of these things, whether it's and showing us that they're actively showing up and having the best interests of all citizens in mind, that they're listening to all citizens. We had that slogan, Hamilton for all. I mean, what good is tweeting that if, we don't, clearly that hasn't been the case, right? So actively showing us what you're doing and that you have an understanding that there are people in the city who have lived experiences that are different from yours. Are you listening? If a group comes to you and wants to meet, take their meetings, take their calls, show up to their events. I think one of the great events I attended in 2021 was the first annual Indigenous Unity Rally. We were outside City Hall and the majority of City Council wasn't there. I mean, that speaks volumes. You have to continually show up and show us that you're doing that, because we see it. And it's so obvious when you're not. We want to see that you're working towards equity for everyone.
People always say, well, the mayor is just one of 16 votes on council. That's a lot of bullshit. The mayor he has the bully pulpit. He or she sets the tone for how people see their city, for how we respond to crisis, for whether or not citizens feel respected. I mean, people want a meeting with the mayor. I'll give you an example. It's freezing cold out right now. And we just heard yesterday, 19 people died in Hamilton between June and November from being houseless. And it's a real crisis. And now we've got people freezing. And it brings to mind Sarah Jama and so many others who had their camp outside of City Hall, just wanting a meeting face to face with the mayor that they could record like he had done with, yellow vesters. They just wanted that conversation. And not only could they not get it, and we're all watching, but there was this ludicrous moment where Sarah was inside of City Hall in her wheelchair asking for a meeting with the mayor. The mayor was up the stairs in his office, and we could see that the mayor's team was following her live feed of it. I mean, I felt like I was watching something out of Monty Python. Well, walk down the stairs and talk to Sarah. So, Kojo, I see you smiling, but I mean, talk about, to Kristen's point, just show up. At least show up and have the courage to have someone tell you what they think. You work for them. You know, who does he think he works for?
Yeah, and and I think since 2018, we've seen that illustration. And I agree with Kristen. If you don't show up, that means that you're probably not invested in the community, and you won't have that open-minded attribute of listening to where people are coming from. So I think when we're talking about choosing leaders, we have to prevent ourselves from name recognition, which happens to be a thing. We also have to look at what have they done in the community to address the current issues, because there are some people, they will never show up, but then I don't know, sometime during the election, they say they have all the solutions and they know how to address it. And to me, that's going to be a red flag, because that means that you haven't been invested. You don't know who the players are, what's going on, what some of the difficult conversations are taking place. So I think those are some of the things that we have to pay attention to.
I think that it gets back to the idea that I raised about the mayor's race. What are people running for? I think we need to see candidates step up who have that community experience, just like you mentioned, who are well-known figures within their neighborhoods for doing good work on the ground, and folks who will come with ideas. I think Hamiltonians are ready for a conversation about ideas. We have big problems we need to face. It's problems around infrastructure, housing, the environment. What about the fact that council is so secretive that sometimes their closed session meetings will go on forever and ever and ever. And a few councilors around the table want to tell people what's going on, but they can't because they're bound by what council convention says and what the city's lawyers tell them they have to do. And we've got folks that are really interested in changing the way our democracy works at City Hall. And I think when candidates are thinking about stepping up for not just these open council races, but some of the incumbents who may be a little bit vulnerable depending on how their records are playing out in the media, I think folks should come to the voters with ideas to inspire them, to make people believe that we can have the leaders we deserve. Do we deserve leaders who don't actually have any ideas about what to do for the city, who simply want to provide good governance, whatever that means? No, I think people want genuine ideas. So that's what I'll be looking for.
Well, I love when you say that, because when I think about, going back to Mayor Fred for a second, what possible platform could he have? He was going to make it the greenest city in Canada, blah, blah, blah. What has he done? He's had 3 kicks at the can, enough already. You're not entitled. And then you've got Bertina. What is he running on? Trying to take the money away again for the train from the city? I mean, what could he possibly bring that's new to the table? But here's my question for you, Kristen. It seems to me like a lot of these incumbents, their support is baked in the cake. They've got a lot of dedicated voters who have been with them for a decade or two, have met them occasionally. They got the card on their anniversary, or they, saw them, whatever. And they think, he cares about me, she cares about me, I'm loyal to them. Seems to me the only way to take away their small margins, because really they're not very big, is to add voters, right? Politics is a game of addition. So, Kristen, do you think that maybe younger Hamiltonians are engaged enough that they're actually going to show up on October 24th and vote and go for these ideas that Chris is talking about? Or do you think we're kind of fooling ourselves here and the incumbents are watching this laughing? Because they do watch it. Do you think maybe they're laughing at us thinking, they're all Pollyannic, I got this in the bag?
They may think, but I think that there is a real promise here, as we've seen, like with the pandemic, especially, there has been such a groundswell. And I think young people, way younger than me, inspire me all the time with their activism, and it's young people who are really leading so many of these movements and pushing for change. So I do see a lot of promise there, and hopefully that maybe leads to speaking to people in your community or your parents, or maybe questioning, hey, that magnet's on your fridge, do you have to keep voting for this person? Let's look at who else is running. Let's look at what they stand for. I've had those conversations. It's important to challenge that, and I think young people are doing that. And to Chris's point, we need to know clearly from you why you're running. If you can't tell us that in a succinct way, what you stand for and what you're bringing to the table, that we need to know. We need these fresh ideas.
When we are talking about motivating people to vote, it's promotion of democracy, which we all can agree that we need to do. And I think in the 2018 election, HCCI did we put out some surveys. And what we noticed is that, I think it's a multi-pronged approach. So we need every resident to talk to their family members. We also need journalists to cover some of the specific issues in different wards, because there are different issues in different wards. We have new cycling lanes in Dundas. Some people oppose cycling lanes, but why is it important? We're not talking about that. When we talk about how homelessness, of course, it addresses the whole city, but it impacts different wards in different ways. So I think that's also one of the things that we need to address. And we also need to start talking to people about the role of municipal government, because I think certain people do not understand that when we're talking about libraries, rec centers, policing, paramedics, fire. These are all the things that the city is responsible for. So if people do not know, then when they are casting their vote, that's why they end up with a name recognition candidate, as opposed to the ideas that Chris and Kristen are talking about. What do we want to see in the environment? How do we build on a cycling master plan? How do we address the issue of affordability, public health? That has become a huge undertaking. The mayor is the chair of the board of health, and we haven't heard from him the last 3 weeks. So these are all the things that we need to start looking at.
Chris, how do we get people to hear the ideas that you're talking about, to feel they're informed enough to make an informed decision on the ballot, to engage without feeling like they're foolish or ignorant of those hyper-local issues, or even, which level of government controls what? I mean, if you don't feel like you know enough, you stay out of it, right? How do we get them to feel they know enough?
That is a question that researchers and candidates have been asking for a really long time. It's something that is so challenging, right? I ran for the public school board in 2014, and I remember knocking on doors across wards 1 and 2, and people would ask me, well, what's your position on LRT? Okay, well, what do you think about this federal issue? What do you think about, hospitals? Folks are political, right? Everyone is political in their own way, but sometimes the specific issues may not necessarily correspond with the election that's happening, which is why candidates need to be multifaceted. They need to be able to take positions on a whole bunch of different things, but more importantly, we need to see larger organizations. iElect is a great example of this, getting out there and doing the work to tell people, this is what the mayor can do. This is what your counselor can do. And importantly, this is what your school trustee can do and what they cannot do. I remember attending mayoral debates again in 2014, where mayoral candidates would start talking about, well, I want to change the buses in the waterfront in Burlington. It's like, you have to know what you're doing when you're running for these positions. And it's important that candidates know what they can and cannot do in the roles that they're running for, and what voters expect of people. And so I think it's really just an effort of getting out there, knocking on doors, talking to folks, and actively engaging your community.
Like, what makes you hopeful that we will see change in this city, and take it wherever you want to go? But I want to leave people with a sense of inspiration, because I think we are all desperate for some. Go ahead, Kristen.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to the people of Hamilton and the sense of community that was so apparent to me when I started I Heard Hamilton in 2011, particularly the online community. I starting a blog. I didn't know I was going to be walking into such an engaged, enthusiastic community. People love getting behind all things Hamilton. And I think as we've seen, like when it comes to the bigger issues and activism, it is the citizens who are driving the way. And I don't know, I can't speak for other cities. I've always lived here, but it really feels like that energy is unmatched. I think it seems so stark in comparison to when you look at kind of the corruption and lack of leadership, to put it mildly, from city council, in comparison to the incredible energy and the enthusiasm and the scrappiness of Hamiltonians. And I think more and more are engaged. So that gives me hope from young people, as I mentioned before, and just citizens really holding leaders accountable and not letting things go. We're not forgetting about any of these issues that we're talking about. And so that gives me hope that we've seen that people can mobilize and make change. We've seen it happen. So that gives me hope that will only continue. And also I will say, because I focus most on arts and culture, that the artists in this city continually inspire me. Hamilton is so filled with talent and passion and creativity. And we've seen in the pandemic, especially, all the more important to support it. And there will always be artists creating, and then all the more important to make sure Hamilton continues to be livable, affordable for everyone.
I mean, I think we have to. Fred Hampton once said, the most important power is people power, and we've seen that, whether it's urban sprawl, whether it's the folks from HESN, whether it's folks with defund HPS, whether it's young people with Fridays for Future. It's all about people power. So again, we have to get over that hump. We have to bring people together. We have to talk to people. We have to meet them where they are. And we also have to attend to people's material needs. Yesterday was one of the coldest days. We saw HESN and community members bring winter gear for houseless neighbors here in Hamilton. So I think with that people power, coming together as a community, building a community, that's what's going to give us the hope that's needed. And again, that will eventually lead to the action that we need to see a better city, and one that Kristen said provides for a Hamilton for all.
Kristen and Kojo summed up a lot of things perfectly. What gives me hope is Hamiltonians. I will say this no matter where I am around the world or in Canada, Hamilton is the greatest city in the country. We are an incredible place filled with incredible people. I see it when I'm, walking through Westdale, stopping in to say hi to the folks that run the shops, and, at the farmer's market, picking up produce and eggs and cheese and wonderful things from our local producers. I see it when I'm running along the bayfront and happy families and folks who are experiencing our environment and the beautiful things that we've been able to accomplish together. Hamilton's an amazing place. And when we stop and we reflect and we take a look at what we've been able to accomplish together, yeah, there have been mistakes. Yeah, sometimes feels like City Hall is working against us rather than with us. Yeah, sometimes things can be bleak, but at the end of the day, we have each other. We have spirit, and we have an incredible drive to do things in a different way. And that alone, it gives me hope. It sustains me all the time.
We are all Hamiltonians, and I'm so inspired by this conversation. I'm sure our audience is going to be as well. And it is an election year. It's a tremendous opportunity to get the information out, share it, the nuance, the ideas, and really get the kind of mayor we need and the kind of city we want. I mean, it's up to us. So thank you very much, Chris Earl, first time on the program. I will definitely have you back. Kristen Archer, love you, and we will have you back as well, and everything you do. And Kojo, you are doing so much for our community in so many ways, and you've got a new album that is dropping. Can you just tell our audience?
You did that. Yes. As people may or may not know, I'm also a musician, so I'll be releasing my third album later on this year.
What's the name of it? We got to pick it up.
It will be called Radical Thoughts. It's a play on some of the things that I've been doing and community members have been doing. So it's called Radical Thoughts.
I love it. Well, I wish you all health in this pandemic. Let's all stay safe and optimistic. We can change our city. Thank you so much, all of you, for being the voices that people trust on the issues they care about in Hamilton. Thanks for doing the OShow.